Welcome back, Inebri-arts. This is Andy of the Inebri-art podcast, and I am once again recording from quarantine lockdown in my house, opposed to our normal craft beer cellar or brewery recordings. And I am, like I said, in the more recent episodes, I've been reaching out to people who I don't normally get a chance to sit down across the table from, and we have Kyle T. Hurley with us today. So welcome to the show, man.
Thank you. Honored.
Thanks. Don't be honored until you hear the interview. So you're a musician. We've been getting a lot of musicians lately because it seems like no one's on tour, and the whole lockdown thing has interrupted a lot of tours. Were you on tour? Like, what was your status prior to?
Well, currently in London, and I just finished a big project, which was my third album. So that was a lot went into that. And that, because of that, you have to be in one spot. Mm-hmm. So I'm just coming out of that now. And then, this whole thing happened on the earth and shut everyone down. So, just here in London, right before this happened, I was coming out of it and doing some gigs around London. And there's a really good scene here right now, especially in Camden.
I've been to Camden. That's great there.
Yeah. It's, and there's a label I'm a part of now called Spiritual Records. It's a very cool, and they have their own venue. It's a very cool artistic scene. It's really organic, and there's a lot of great artists coming to there. And I would really recommend it for anyone that can get there.
Nice, yeah.
But
so you don't seem to have a British accent, so I'm assuming you're not from London. Are you there just to record, or do you live there now?
No, I live here now. I'm based here. I really like the music scene here.
Yeah.
And that's I came here from LA,
mm-hmm.
and not knocking LA. I mean, it's great, but I have found that for up and coming artists, London is kind of a better fit. A lot of artists in the past that I've read about have come here first and really been nurtured by the scene here. I mean, not that you could even mention, my name in the same breath as them, but I mean, Bob Dylan and Jimi Hendrix, even Tom Petty and, the Stray Cats, all those guys, they really got popular here first before the US. And Hendrix never really broke in the U.S. until after he died. So I just think, here in the UK and especially in London, they really pay attention to a new sound, and they nurture that, which is why I came here really from LA.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. We have some local bands. I was telling you that I was from Plymouth, and that are just kind of like breaking out, that are starting to tour nationally. And we have a very strong music scene here, but it's all like local pubs and whatnot. So they want cover bands. No one's really, maybe you can squeeze in an original song a couple times in a set or whatever. But, when the crowd's not there to see you, they just want background music.
You're preaching. That's what I say, is that the most important thing, take this for what it's worth. But what I think is the most important thing for an artist that's up and coming and, wanting to do something with their music is get in a scene. Mm-hmm. Get in a scene. The scene is the most important thing. Being around people that are doing what you want to do, that can feed off of your vibe. You can feed off their vibe. You can grow. It's so important. And if you look at the story of artists that have really broken through, that is like the unifying thread. No matter where they were from, they all went to the scene.
Yeah.
So that's like a big thing. I'm sorry, I'm not that familiar with like geographically where Plymouth is, but is Boston like the closest city, or?
Yeah, we're kind of in between. We're like 30, 45 minutes south of Boston and about the same distance north of Providence, Rhode Island.
Okay.
So those are the biggest cities. And
man.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah.
Rhode Island actually has a pretty good music scene, and of course Boston has a ton of clubs and whatnot. And
Aerosmith.
That's of course. Yeah. They live 2 towns away. They live just south of Boston, so they live kind of right up the street. And
yeah, are you a fan yourself?
I grew up like in the 90s.
I mean, if you're not, you're not. But
no, I wouldn't say I'm not. I really appreciate their music. I'm not a huge fan. Like I kind of pick and choose. Like I really like this song. You know, their stuff after Permanent Vacation kind of lost me. Once they started doing theme songs for Armageddon, I'm like, meh.
Yeah. No, I agree. Yeah.
But yeah, we actually have the other local musician claim to fame is Michael Sweet, the lead singer of Stryper.
Okay.
The 1980s hair band. He lives right
Yeah. Okay.
But we actually have like a really great scene here. We have 2 venues. We have the Spire Performing Arts Center that gets a lot of when it opened, it was very like one style of music, but they're really switching it up now. And then we have Memorial Hall that Art Garfunkel was just there. The Wallflowers.
Wow.
So they've gotten some decent.
Well, since you bring up the Wallflowers, there's an interesting example of like being in a scene. Like Jacob Dylan. Obviously was Bob Dylan's son, but he struggled for a while. Like in the beginning, I mean, nobody cared.
Really, I just kind of assumed he kind of had that.
I'm not
saying that he played off that name, but you can't help it sometimes.
Well, I mean, I agree. I agree that that you're always going to have that comparison, totally. And I mean, how many children of people that have really broken through are great.
Right.
I mean, but Jacob Dylan, if you look at his story, it's interesting because he was just in a band gigging around LA. And I mean, we're talking like just different bars, different clubs, just over and over and over again. And he was getting nowhere. And then he just did it on his own. Like he went through, so the Wallflowers, as we know, went through like 3 or 4 different versions until they finally broke through. But I forget the name of that album. But just to go back to the idea of like he was in that valley, Simi Valley, LA scene. And without it, I just think musicians die.
Now, do you think it's important to get the right scene? So, like, if you want to do kind of grunge music, to go to Seattle. If you do want to do country music, go to Nashville. Like, is there like a specific area for each style of music, or are there areas that are just kind of more susceptible to or acceptable of all kinds?
I've never thought about that in that specifics. I think could. I'm at a point now where I think of music more as like is like art.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, so it's like, I would say for me, again, whatever that's worth, I would go to a scene that is artistic as possible. Mm-hmm. And what does that mean to me is like people that are open-minded, people that are willing to try different sounds, different combinations. I mean, so I don't know, like a scene where you could do grunge with rap or rap with country or rock with, more of a old R&B sound. I mean, I don't know. I mean, just like personally, I'm at a point where I try to be as open-minded as possible. And those would be the kind of scenes that I would prefer myself.
Yeah. And I have to ask this question. I hate to ask it because I know it's almost like an impossible question to answer nowadays. And you just made me think of it because, you're talking about country with rap. How do you define your sound? Like, would you classify yourself in one way or the other? Which, again, I hate asking, but trying to give our listeners an idea of what to expect. So, like, how would you do that? What would you compare yourself to, like, sound-wise?
Jeez. Well, the thing about my sound, I mean, like, when you're putting your music out there, everyone's always like, they want the genre,
Right.
What genre are you? Rock, pop, and then,
it's the record store. It's the record store mentality. Like,
exactly.
Do I go to the rap section or do I go to the rock section? And it's so hard.
Yeah, and that's Exactly. And that's so hard to do with a lot of great artists because, like, I think I remember one time somebody was telling me that they never knew where to put Neil Young. You know, like when you go into a, not that anyone even does anymore, but when you would go into like a CD or record store, like which section would you go for Neil Young? I mean, he could be in so many different sections. Personally, I would define my sound like in two ways. The first is by looking at my roots, which roots don't change, and then whatever I'm listening to at the time that I'm writing those songs. So like my roots would be, you know, if you really boil it down to the bare bones, I mean, I go way back. So Elvis, like I just always go back. I have such a deep appreciation at this point for the artisticness of Elvis Presley. I mean, and when you're out like here in Europe, it is unbelievable the amount of appreciation and respect and love that people have for that man outside of the U.S.
I wouldn't.
And yeah, it's crazy, especially because he never once played outside the United States. And still, I mean, it's just, it doesn't matter what pub, what bar, anywhere in the world, just having played, you know, at a lot of major cities throughout Europe, doesn't matter. I don't know the language. If I play a song by Elvis, 99% of the time, people they're going to like it. They're going to get up. They're going to start dancing. They're going to, you know, the mood is good. They just love it. So, you know, that says something, you know. And it was funny. I was reading the other day that this past Christmas, one of his Christmas albums went gold. So like he's still selling. Yeah. Like to that degree, you know what I mean? It's insane what he did.
It's funny because like anytime I think of Elvis, I think of like Vegas and Elvis impersonators. It's like I almost feel like living in this country, I guess I kind of take him for granted a little. Like I don't really pay much attention. Just be like, oh, it's Elvis. That's like a Vegas thing. And
well, yeah. Let me come back to Elvis. I want to talk about Elvis. I want to talk about Elvis because there's a lot I could say there.
Yeah, let's finish your roots and then we'll talk about Elvis.
So for me, you know, Elvis, Johnny Cash, Dylan, Hank Williams, you know, those are my really, you know, the Doors. Those are like my basic roots. And then for this last album that I put out, I was really influenced by the 90s. Some music that I heard when I was kind of growing up, and hearing those songs again, it takes you back to that time of your life, like a specific moment, a specific song. I could think of so many. The Wallflowers. I mean, I remember when that song, you know, One Headlight came out. Yeah. You know what that was like. You know, just hearing it on the radio, being driven around. Of course, I couldn't drive at that point, but so. A lot of those songs and sounds were incorporated into this most recent album. So I mean that's kind of how I would answer like how would I define my sound? Definitely rock, definitely blues. Yeah. I do like some rap. I like country, but you know, I'm Kyle T. Hurley. What can I say?
So, you know, as you were talking about the 90s, I was thinking about, like, oh, what was I listening to in the 90s? And I was a huge Nirvana fan. And I remember when they came on the scene, there was nothing like them, like, in the mainstream. And they really kind of, you know, turn things around. And, like, I every once in a while I go back, I'm like, oh, man, I forgot how good these songs were. And I wonder if that's where my Elvis Presley appreciation is lacking, because I've never lived in a world that didn't have Elvis.
It's true. Yeah, I mean, I've like when Nirvana first came out, I mean, I was like, you know, I was still a baby, you know, so I don't remember a time really without Nirvana. Like I don't remember a time when all I remember about Nirvana and Kurt Cobain is, you know, tragically what happened with him and the band, and just such a mystery and a he was one of those figures that like belongs up on Mount Rushmore or something. That was how like me and my friends would look at someone like that, and that's how we've always looked at him.
Yeah.
So, with someone like that, and especially Elvis, I have learned to find, to scale that back, to scale away the prestige of their name, and look at what makes them good by seeing them through the eyes of other artists.
Okay.
So for example, for me to appreciate Elvis Presley, it was a journey. I mean, when I grew up, my ears were so saturated by rock and pop on the radio, that when you have that kind of music and then you hear something like Elvis, you're like, what is this? Like you don't see it for what it is. And I mean, musically, if you look at it, like a lot of the songs, Jailhouse Rock and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
it's like, it's very simple on the surface, right?
Right.
Then when I started to really get into other artists, especially Bob Dylan, and I saw how much of their work was actually them trying to be like Elvis,
Yeah.
and was actually them paying ode to Elvis, then I saw Elvis for what he really was and just how foundational he is. And when you consider that, it's really unbelievable, and it helps you appreciate the little points about an artist like that. Like, I think Elvis not enough attention is paid to the artistic side of Elvis.
Yeah.
So like as you said, the Vegas Elvis and that whole thing, that's what people see, and me too. But like, he put that together,
Mm-hmm.
like that whole sound, that whole show, the band, the how the musicians played the songs, the key they were playing it, the tempo they were playing it, the dance moves he was doing. That was all from his mind.
Right. And that's
Like,
one of those, it makes me think of when Peter Jackson was filming The Lord of the Rings. He kind of was looking at ideas for Gandalf and the wizard and the dark gray cloak with the pointy hat, and he's like, oh, it's so cliche. And he's like, no, it's not. He's like, this was where the cliche came from.
Yeah.
It was it's almost like that's where the original spark came from that kind of inspired everything else. And I mean, Elvis, even indirectly, has probably influenced everyone that plays music now in some way or the other.
Yeah, I agree. It's interesting. I was, who arguably is the best selling artist of the 20th century is Bing Crosby. And
because of White Christmas.
Yeah, White Christmas. And before they really started counting albums and album sales in other countries, he was selling a lot. So that's why they think like it could be between him and, of course, Elvis and the Beatles. But he could have outsold Elvis. It's possible.
You know what? I think you just stumbled on why I've never really paid much attention to Elvis. And it's because I worked retail for a huge portion of my younger life. And you get that music, and it's always Christmas music from Thanksgiving to Christmas. And they always played Blue Christmas by Elvis.
Oh, yeah.
Every 2 hours. So if you work an 8-hour shift, you hear it 4 times in a day, and you're ready to blow your brains out. You're like, I've had it. I don't want to hear that song ever again.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the main songs by a lot of big artists like Elvis, I mean, I don't hardly never listen to. I can't. I'll tell you what. You know what I've been doing this quarantine period is listening to every song from every album in order from a few key artists. And even if I get tired of listening to them, that's what I do. And I finished Led Zeppelin. And when I got to Stairway to Heaven, I realized it was the first time I listened to that song for probably 15 years. Because every time it would come on, I would always turn it off, just having listened to it so much when I was younger. You know what I mean?
And it's like Guns N' Roses November Rain. I can't listen to it. It's on the radio.
Nah,
still
agreed.
All the time, and it's like comes on, I'm like, ugh. And
yeah,
I saw them 2 summers ago, and they're phenomenal. And even when they played November Rain live in concert, I was still like, oh, come on, I'm gonna go to the bathroom. Like,
yeah.
There's
something. Was that with Slash?
Yeah, it's when they first announced they're going back on tour. And so friends of mine are like, oh, they're playing Foxborough. You want to go see them? And I'm like, yeah, give me a ticket. This concert's never going to happen. I'm like,
yeah,
they'll play like 1 or 2 shows and have a big falling out. And then they
funny you say that. I went to see my dad when I was like 14. Took me to see GNR in Philly.
Yep.
Where I was born. And do you know CKY?
Yeah.
Yeah, CKY opened, and Mixmaster Mike.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so what happened was we went down there, and CKY goes on. Mixmaster Mike is doing his thing, and doing his thing, and doing his thing, and doing his thing, on and on, on and on. And it got to the point where it was like, this is getting ridiculous. When is GNR coming on? And then he stopped. And as soon as he stopped, and there was like 10 minutes of silence, we just knew. Yeah. And then the announcer came on and was like, Axl is not feeling well. He can't do the show. And there was a riot. So
I heard about that show. I know exactly what show you're talking about.
Yeah. I was there. And apparently he was in his hotel room in New York watching the Lakers or something like that.
Yeah. So even to the point of like driving to the concert, I'm like, it's not going to happen. This is not going to happen.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, they've been touring since then. And the thing that I found most surprising by that, and I get you go to see the main band and not the opening act, but Lenny Kravitz was the opening act.
Oh, wow.
And the place was like half full. And I'm like, this is Lenny Kravitz. Where are you people? It was, it was the second time I've seen him, and I mean, he puts on an unbelievable show.
Yeah, he's awesome. He's I'm a big Lenny Kravitz fan. I like that song he did with Mick Jagger a little while ago.
I don't know if I know that one.
I think he did one, or it was recorded in his studio or something. It was called God Gave Me Everything I Want, or something like that. I don't know.
I'm gonna have to check that out. So that's an interesting thing is the music industry has changed so much where like a song like that can come out and I won't even know about it because it's done for like YouTube or some online thing. Or do you appreciate the YouTube portion of the music industry? Is that something you focus on, or is it just kind of like a byproduct?
I mean, YouTube is I appreciate it for what it is. It's frustrating for myself because it comes down to, what do I do? Mm-hmm. I'm a singer-songwriter. I mean, that's what I do. Right. But, and way back, before the internet, that was what you did. You wrote songs, you went out and played them. Well, now it's not like that. You write songs, you play them, get them online, get them on YouTube, do different videos, publicize those videos, try and get more gigs, try to do all this stuff that in the old days, like you didn't have to do, but now it's so much more than just singing and songwriting. So I like YouTube for the access that you can get, but it is frustrating in that it adds to the plate of, our responsibilities,
Yeah, it kind of takes some of that marketing job that someone else would normally have done in the past and is now on your plate.
There's so much onus on the artist today. And I think that's why a lot of artists don't get where they want to get to because, and I understand it, because the onus is so much on them. There's so much work involved today that way, way back then, that was done by other people. All you had to do was show up and play. Now you got to do everything to the point where if you get a major label, you don't need them. I mean, that from what I've seen, that's the only point that a major label comes into the picture is when they're not needed.
Yeah, where you've kind of already done all the legwork yourself.
Exactly. Whereas all that like A&R, you know, like what we're talking about is A&R. I mean, that's what it comes down to, right? There is no A&R today. It does not exist. It's dead. And things like YouTube and the internet really, to a large extent, you know, killed it.
Yeah. I've heard this from actors, and I mean, we kind of get some of the same thing that, you know, when I approach PR people and whatnot, or like actors, when they're trying to get a role, you know, the movie studios will want to know, well, like, how many followers you have on Instagram. They'll ask us, like, how many downloads do you get? When you book gigs, do they start, like, asking, like, well, what is your YouTube subscription like? Do people ask that, or is it more just kind of, like, when you get a gig, are they expecting you to bring the crowd, or are they expecting to provide the crowd? I guess that's really what it means.
That's the difference, I would say, between a city like LA and a city like London. Here, you want to play? Are you good? Do you sound good? Are your songs interesting? Do you connect with people? Do we feel your songs? If it's yes, you're going to play. You're going to play in a good place. In a place like LA, take for what it is. Maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. In a place like LA, in my opinion, how many people can you bring to your gig? That is the most important question. I don't care what you sound like. I don't care what you're singing about. I don't care if you connect with people. If you're bringing people into a place, you're going to play.
Yeah.
You know, that's most places in LA at this point are, you know, bands and Nashville, from what I say. Again, I'm not talking bad. I'm just saying, like, most places, like, those bands are paying to play there.
Yeah.
From what I've seen, and most.
Oh.
I mean, up on the Strip.
Yeah.
You are paying them to play there. And I can see both sides of the coin, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, if you're playing a club like the Whiskey Go-Go or something, right? Or really any place, if you're playing in Hollywood, right?
Yeah.
A lot of promoters will say, consider that as your payment.
Right.
To be able to say, and I guess they have a point, like, for you to say that you played in Hollywood, like, I guess that has some pull power, or people will hear that and be like, oh, that's interesting. But, you know, like the Doors, for example, before they were the house band at the Whiskey Go-Go, they were playing 2 doors down at the London Fog, which is up on the Sunset Strip, and they were getting paid. And they were bringing no one to their shows. No one. I mean, Ray Manzarek would say that's how their first album was constructed. Just they were playing to an empty room. They were just jamming. They were like, just let's try this, let's try that. And they were still getting paid. What place in Hollywood is going to do that now? I mean,
they're going to look at that as a loss. Yeah.
It really is. You know, I mean, money kills good scenes.
You know, and that's kind of one of those, you know, gentrification things. Like, there's a town south of here, New Bedford, and it's really starting to kind of pop up on the radar of people where, like, hey, there's a lot of cool art stuff going on down there, and there's kind of a building music scene. And to me, it always seems like the artists and musicians go where it's affordable, because generally they're, you know, they're working a day job, they're working enough so they can support their art of whatever it is, and then it's almost like they do all the legwork to make the cool area that people want to go to, and then people go to it and inadvertently push them out, because, you know, then prices go up, and it's be kind of on like a cycle.
Yeah, I mean, it happened in LA, it happened in New York, it's happened in Nashville. I mean, Nashville used to be Music City. And I'm not saying it's not, but I mean, like, whenever I go back, you know, it's like a big time place now to have like bachelor and bachelorette parties
in Nashville.
Like, like if you talk to people getting married and stuff, apparently it's like a hot spot to just go down there and so, I mean, like, that's Like, just listen to that statement. Like, people go there. That's why they go there.
Right.
They don't go there for music. They go there to like have a party.
Yeah.
So I mean,
there's nothing wrong with having a party and enjoying the music.
Absolutely.
But
yeah, it changed the scene.
Yeah.
You know what? It changed the scene. I mean, and it's a cycle. Like, I'm not trying to be super negative about a lot of cities. And LA, I love LA. I love New York. I love Nashville. I do. But for up and coming artists, there are facts of life that have to be met.
Right. It's almost like a weird arms race between the venue and the artist of who's the bigger deal. If the artist is bigger than the venue, then the venue can be like, okay, we have to pay you or you're not going to play here. But if the venue, like you said, Whiskey or the Viper Room or wherever, is like a feather in your cap to play, then I could see them being like, well, why am I going to pay you to play here when a dozen bands want to play here just so they can say they played here? It's weird.
It's money. A lot of times it comes down to money. And I guess I could see both sides. Like, these club owners, like, they need money to pay their businesses. And honestly, how many people are coming out to live music nowadays? I mean, compared
now,
to before,
no one.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So
yeah.
Exactly now. Yeah. So I mean, there are both sides, but
is there a place in London that is like your favorite place to play?
Yeah. Well, this place. So in Camden, this place called Spiritual Bar. It's owned by the people that run our label, Spiritual Records. Mm-hmm. It's a very cool. It's like when I read about like Greenwich Village or whatever in the '60s, and I don't know, it's kind of cliche, but Cafe Wa and that whole thing. Like, I feel like the vibes could be very similar.
Yeah.
So it's really it's quite artistic, I would say. So I appreciate it because of that.
It seems like a weird, like, initially it seems like a weird combination. Like, oh, I own a record label and a bar, but when you really think about it, it makes a lot of sense, because then you put the acts that you put out in your bar, and the more albums and swag and whatever they're selling, you're promoting your bands in your own place. It just makes a lot of sense that way.
Yeah, I mean, it works well, and I mean, it's it really feeds the local scene as well. So I think and the owners of the place are very have quite an artistic mind too, and I think that's important. And there's people that own these clubs today have a responsibility that more now than ever. I mean, it's important that they do the right thing. That they balance between the need for money mm-hmm. and the need for art. They have a great responsibility, because venues today, I mean, they are just closing left and right. Yeah. And I mean, there are many venues that are legendary, like CBGB's, that now it's like a department store.
Right, because they're more concerned about you buying a T-shirt than actually going to listen to it.
Yeah. So, I mean, things have definitely changed.
But I think it's that unique idea, but it's not just a venue; it's a venue and a record label. We have a venue not too far up the road here called Soundcheck, and it's rehearsal studios. So they have the revenue of renting out to these musicians to rehearsal space and whatnot. But then they have a concert area, and so like those bands that rehearse there can play there. They can get other people in. They run networking events and all sorts of things. It's a really cool venue.
So I gotta get down to Plymouth.
Yeah, man, it's
come check it
out.
It's
a lot of fun. This was a few years ago. We were considered the most drinkingest town in Massachusetts, which I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. But
okay.
It's a big tourist area, and there's like two streets. It's right across from Plymouth Rock, and the street kind of that runs parallel behind it. There's got to be, I don't know, 40 bars and restaurants, and some of the best food, and there's tons of things to do. And
so is it just like a rock?
Oh, Plymouth Rock?
Like is it just like the Plymouth Rock? Is like it's a rock?
Yeah, it's so here's the thing. When I first moved here, it's always been kind of a joke, and like even tourists will come up and they'll look at it and they'll just go, "Oh, that's it." It's literally just a rock that at one point had been broken and they stuck back together, and there's a stamp on it that's 1620. And there's a big like monument built around it, and it's incredibly not impressive. And one of our other podcasts.
You sell it well.
Oh, well, there's more to the story. So our other podcast, the Old Colony Cast, kind of came because we wanted to, we love this area. So we wanted to kind of promote things in the area and tell cool stories and a little bit of history. And that one had kind of struggled for a bit. And we brought in a new co-host, Hannah, and she is a history buff. Not like she's not an actual historian. She's just very geared into history, and it's kind of like a hobby. And she's like, "Oh, we need to do an episode about Plymouth Rock." And I'm like, "Really?" I'm like, "It's so just a rock." She's like, No, trust me." And apparently it had a huge impact on the Revolutionary War, and like, so like people speaking out against England would go and like stand on the rock and kind of like, do their rhetoric or whatever to kind of incite the
oh, that's cool.
crowds. Yeah, so it has kind of like this unimpressive look to it, but like when you actually really think about the history, it's pretty cool. But it's a hard sell to impress people. You just look at it and you're like, it's so small. But it used to be right out, so like you could walk up and touch it, and people used to chip off pieces of it. And they estimate that there's maybe, because at one time it's split in half, the top half, they think there's only about a third left of what was really there.
Oh, wow.
So there's tons of history around here. It's a very cool area.
I like that great. Old. Yeah, well, I think that's cool. The old, like the real organic America.
Yeah.
I mean, it's that's I like that. Do you know? This is like what I envision in my mind, looking out over a place like Plymouth. Don McLean it could have been in Massachusetts, but he was in a small town, just looking out from his room over this town. And he wrote a song just based on what he saw called American Pie.
No, yeah.
So that's like what I think about, is that old, the old American spirit or whatever.
Yeah. And part of why I love this town, and our listeners have heard me gush about Plymouth pretty much nonstop. I moved here maybe like 10 years ago. When I first moved here, I kind of went to a lot of the tourist bars and whatnot. I'm like, oh, it feels like I'm on vacation all the time. I love this. And then as I kind of got more involved and met more people and more business owners and whatnot, the community here is just unbelievable. I mean, like I said, there's 40 bars and restaurants. You think that it would be cutthroat and they'd be, trying to like outdo the other guy. And it's not like that at all. Like they'll run across the street just to check in with the restaurant owner across the street and be like, "Hey man, do you have any, I don't know, brown sugar or whatever?" And, they just trade back and forth. And, if someone's in trouble, everyone pitches in. And one of the best events that happens, and it happened just for the third time this year, these two local bar owners made a bet on the Patriots. And it was going to be, if you lose, you're going to 10 bar in my bar, and if I lose, I'm going to 10 bar in your bar. And it steamrolled like out of control, where it turned into an arm wrestling competition. So every place in town put up a male and female contestant, and they brought in like, the U.S. arm wrestling team or whatever. So it was done completely legitimate, and you had to pay like $20 to get in, and it went to the local food pantry.
Nice.
And it runs on like a Monday night, and they shut the town down. Like, you can't go
Oh,
out to eat
wow.
because every restaurant closes to go to this.
Oh, that's
And
cool.
so it's just this great sense of community that, I mean, I feel so fortunate to be part of. And
How did you find yourself, if I may ask?
I got divorced.
Okay.
And so, yeah, when I was looking for places to live, I used to come, I grew up in the area. So, like, I've been to Plymouth Plantation when I was in high school.
Oh, so you're from there?
Yeah, I mean, I'm
Cool.
maybe from 20 minutes away originally.
Okay.
In high school, we used to come down to hang out at the waterfront and cause trouble. And so I always loved it here. And so then I ended up down here. And, I'm an artist, and there's a great art community. They have an art center, and there's studios all over the place. And
what kind of art do you do?
I do mostly pen and ink drawing. I'm supposed to be interviewing
nice.
you.
Okay. Well, just interesting.
No. I'm just kidding.
It's funny.
Wherever they go.
It's funny with drawing and visual artwork. If I do this thing where I really research artists that I like. Mm-hmm. So if you look at a lot of what they were doing as they were growing up, a lot of times they were doing that. I mean, they were in art school, drawing school. So there's like a lot of parallels. I'm horrible at drawing, but
well, that's kind
respect.
of how this whole podcast thing came to be. Was I went to Fish, he's our editor and producer, and I said, "Hey man, I want to start an art podcast." And he's like, "That's stupid, art's visual." And I'm like, "Cool, I'll get back to you." And I was sitting and I stumbled across like a YouTube video of Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Ricky Gervais, and Louis C.K. And they were sitting around talking about how they write jokes and why they work, some work dirty and some, work clean. And just some of the stuff they were talking about like really rang true. And I realized that it's not really art that I wanted to talk about and to artists. I wanted to talk to creative people because, you have music. I kind of am fortunate that the way I was brought up that, I have a little bit of a theater background. I have a little bit of music background and an art background. So I kind of can, pretend like I know what I'm talking about in a lot of areas. But it's all the creative mindset that I think is really fascinating. And,
I agree. I mean, if you look at big artists, I mean, whatever that means, but if you look at the artists I like, I mentioned Zeppelin earlier, so I'll bring up them. Robert Plant, he always mentioned he liked musicians that put on a drama on stage.
Yeah.
And it's interesting if you think of a show, a concert as a drama. There's so much more to it than just going and hearing someone play. You hear it, you feel it, you see it. And if you watch early Zeppelin or Elvis, it really is it's not a music show, it's a show. You know what I mean? There's so much more to it than just what you're hearing. So the theatrical part of it is, I think is quite important. So,
do you take that into consideration in your show? Do you kind of, obviously, you don't have the budget of like Led Zeppelin or like an Iron Maiden to have like all sorts of set pieces and explosions, but do you try to build in some theatrics to what you do?
Yeah. Well, if it's funny, if you watch, Zeppelin shows, surprisingly, they didn't have much. I mean, they were of course they had lights, but, yeah, I mean, if you watch have you seen this, The Song Remains the Same, the live? No, are you a Zeppelin fan?
Yeah. In the 90s, it was all Zeppelin. Like that was.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah. Well, they have this live, like documentary music show that they did called The Song Remains the Same.
Their version of A Hard Day's Night.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And the live shows that they show in there, it's just them on stage with lights.
Yeah.
I mean, like that's how good they were. It's insane.
It makes me think of when Bohemian Rhapsody was coming out, I saw like a clip that they had recorded, or when they were recreating the Live Aid performance, and I'm like, I kind of remember that, and I went and I found it on YouTube, and I sat and watched it like all the way through, and I'm like, this is incredible. Like, this is a phenomenal performance, and there's nothing on stage. I mean, it was daytime. There's not even lights. It's just them. And he was such a phenomenal performer
that's where you get into the like like the magic or whatever. You know, I mean, define it how you will, but some artists, and some artists only during some performances, that there's a real penetrating magic that comes out. And if you, as you said, a Live Aid Queen. Yeah. If you know, for me, what always struck me was the way that the audience was reacting to him. I mean, every person in that place was connected to him. Yeah. During that show, and
unreal.
Yeah, and it was just them on stage with instruments. So, I mean, I try to myself, you know, I just go up there, I play, you know. I like to use the visual a little bit. I mean, I always wear this. This is every time I play and do anything, I wear this, because this is like my vision of myself as a performer, you know. There's Kyle, and then Kyle T. Hurley, you know. Yeah. It's like this is a personality I've created.
Sure.
And so when I go out there, I'm presenting that personality, and I don't really move around much, you know, because I have to play guitar, so I can't really do that. But I just go up there and you know, I just try to. I would say the theatrical part is my delivery. Is what I try to focus on. You know, it's funny. Everything we're talking about, you know, what you referenced in terms of big budget shows, that is why KISS exists.
I mean, terrible.
The interview. The interviews that. Okay. Well, I mean, the interviews that they say is like they always wanted to be the band that they never saw live, and I mean, live. I mean, their shows are just you know, extravagant.
Yeah.
And you know, the makeup and everything. I mean, you know, I could be in a KISS movie. You know what I mean?
I mean,
not for you.
No.
Okay. They're really, you know, they're rocking. You know, but it's not for everyone.
It's you know, and I think it's because when I first, you know, my life musically has been a real journey. You know, my first album I ever owned was Air Supply's Greatest Hits.
Okay.
And
I heard it through a friend who heard it through a friend.
Probably.
Something like that.
The last time I listened to Air Supply was probably when I owned that.
Okay.
But then, like, as I became a teenager, I kind of became a little rebellious, so I was getting into heavy metal. And when you're at that age and you're into heavy metal, you look at KISS and you're like, yes, that's the band. And then you listen to them and you're like, oh, this is not, they're not heavy metal. Like, they have a heavy metal look, but they do not have a heavy metal sound.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of why I never got into it.
It's true. I give them the benefit of the doubt because they were coming out of that glam scene.
Sure.
You know, it's like, you know, I kind of, it's funny too. I give like early Guns N' Roses the benefit of the doubt too, because you could, like, if you watch the Welcome to the Jungle video, Axl Rose's hair is all
it's all teased up.
And it's because, I mean, he has since said that it was because he just wanted to do it one time and that was it. I think it was because they were in the hair metal scene in LA through no fault of their own. I mean, that's just what the scene was. So, and they were just products of their scene. So I think KISS, and then, you know, they became GNR as we know them.
Yeah.
And, you know, KISS too came out of that really glammy kind of scene. So I try to give them the benefit of the doubt because that, but
I've always said, listen to what you like. I just don't like it. So it's no judgment.
Well, they had a hard time getting into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame because a lot of people, they're very divisive. I mean, either you like them or you don't. I mean, there's not a song that like you'd be like, oh yeah, I kind of like that song. Yeah. With Kiss, it's like you take them as they are, or you just don't like them.
And their
they just got
aggressive.
Yeah, the Kiss Army.
Yeah.
I like them. I was never into the Kiss Army, or I never had any of the merchandise or anything like that.
Yeah.
But what I appreciate is like the attention that they give to that theatrical side. I think it's different, and it's say what you want about them, but it is creative.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
So,
like visually, they have a real style, and they have a visual like vocabulary. Like you can kind of put a couple of items together that don't even say Kiss, and you'd be like, that's got a Kiss vibe to it.
Yeah.
And
are you a guitar player at all?
Or? Back in the day, when I did play, I played clarinet, saxophone, bass clarinet, and guitar.
Oh, nice.
But then I went to art school, and I'm like, I have to focus on one, and I kind of gave up music.
Okay. Well, I mean, Ace Frehley, who was the original guitarist for them, he had an interesting style.
Yeah.
But I mean, not for everyone. So.
It's interesting that you bring up the theatrics and like how, like, I'm a big Rob Zombie fan. Probably because of art. Like he was an art school dropout, and he was always focused on his art and getting into movies and whatnot. But I just saw him for the first time maybe a year ago. I can't remember exactly when. And I've seen tons of interviews with him, and he's very chill and he's laid back and almost to the point where like, is he awake? And then to see him in concert was like night and day difference. He's running around and jumping off the stage, and there's risers, and it was like a full theater experience,
Well, I can say that's a scene I've never been able to get into, like Rob Zombie, Marilyn Manson.
Yeah.
Even like Rammstein. I kind of
no,
throw them in there,
yeah.
And I don't know if you'd put like Slipknot in there.
Yeah, definitely. Slipknot is like the real heavy metal version of Kiss.
Yeah. And even 9 Inch Nails.
Sure, I can see that.
Like, I mean, that scene, myself, I would say I never got the bug.
Yeah.
But I appreciate the creative side of it. That's the point I'm at myself, is like, if anybody, it's funny you bring up Jerry Seinfeld, because somebody asked him what he thought about different comics and stuff. And he said, well, he never, like, he says something along the lines of, he never really criticizes when someone's up on stage and he's judging them or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
He's actively looking for something that he likes, instead of all the stuff he doesn't like, because the stuff that is not good, I mean, most of the time you're not good.
Yeah.
Everyone, most of the time when you get up on stage, in my opinion, you're not good. It's just so being good is the exception. And that's why it's important to decidedly look for those things, and I'm at the point where it's like, that's what I try to do. So with someone like Rob Zombie, and especially his movies, it's like some of his movies is like, man, like
some are not good.
I mean, like
some are flat not good, even if you're.
I mean, but they're like they're but it's like gruesome horror.
Yeah. It's.
And I'm not knocking it. I mean, if you like it, cool. But for me, it's just like why do I need to see that? It's like, you know what I mean? Yeah. Like, I don't know. Maybe some people think, they enjoy it. Just so I appreciate the creativity, but some bugs get you. I'll tell you one bug that never got me is jazz. I don't know how you feel about that.
Well, I used to play in the high school jazz band, so I really do appreciate, and I'm sure part of it was, in the high school I went to, when you played in band, you were automatically in concert and marching band. And jazz band was harder to get into and kind of was different. And so it was like concert band, but you got to play more fun things, and it was more complicated. There was a smaller group, so the camaraderie was better. So it's hard for me to say, I think that's one of those I really enjoyed learning about jazz music, and kind of, so when I don't listen to it on a regular basis, but I think when I do hear it, it kind of takes me back to that time that I really enjoyed, kind of, it's got nostalgia. So it's hard for me to separate the two, but yeah, like Chick Corea and
oh wow, so you like your jazz?
Yeah,
oh,
yeah.
okay.
I mean,
so would you just turn on jazz? You're just driving around, walking around, and just turn on
jazz? On a rare occasion, but not, like I said, it's more like I think every once in a while I'll just be like, hey man, I really want to hear Tiger San Pedro, and I'll put that song on. But I don't. And again, I think it's more of a nostalgia thing. But I do appreciate it. I've gone, and now that I do this and other things, I've kind of really found that I end up in weird places. Plymouth is naming their first poet laureate. So friends of mine are like, oh, you got to go. They're having like the 4 finalists to stand up and read poetry. And I am not a poetry guy at all. But I'm like, oh, I got to make an appearance and do the kind of, shaking hands, being part of Plymouth thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I, without knowing this about Jerry Seinfeld, I kind of did that sort of thing where I'm like, I want to be engaged. So, I looked for what I did like in it, opposed to just kind of zoning out and being on my phone or whatever. So, but
I hear you. I mean, I've been there too, where it's just like, when someone's up there playing, you're just like, man, you get bored because you don't connect to it. So it's the only way to stay engaged is to try to find something you like,
Do you have a harder time listening to musicians being a musician? Because one of my pet peeves about going out to hear live music, especially when they're the local bar band, so you never know what you're going to get, is going with certain musician friends of mine, because you'll have a conversation and all of a sudden they'll be like, oh, and I'll be like, what? They're like, he's sharp. And I'm like, I don't care. Like, do you have that kind of, can you kind of shut off the musician part of your brain and just kind of activate that music fan part where you can kind of not be so critical?
Well, first of all, I try, in terms of like the whole being sharp thing. I myself, I try not to be too technical with music, though I do know some theory, and reading and stuff like that does have value. So I try not to let that come into the equation. But I'll tell you this: if it didn't come out past the '90s, I don't know about it.
Oh, really?
I don't. Yeah. I don't know about it. I cannot listen and get excited and into new music.
Really?
And it's even though I am around new music all the time. And myself putting out. I mean, this last album I had, it was it's all original. My last album, 80% original. Same for my first. So and that is the scene here. Is they're very much about original music, but I can't, I don't know. I cannot get into original music. I don't know. So if that is, as a musician, something others could turn off, I just can't do it. No.
Yeah.
I know what I like. I want to listen to what I like. I'll tell you what I'm doing now with listening to all the songs on every album from one artist, start to finish.
Yeah.
Without stopping. Is a big deal for me, because a lot of I'm listening. So right now I did Led Zeppelin.
Yep.
I did Pink Floyd, and it was interesting. I've been a Pink Floyd fan my entire life, but I never ever heard, probably like 90% of the people out there, most of the material pre Dark Side of the Moon.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Like
most people,
you have Dark Side of the Moon, they have The Wall, maybe some more of their recent stuff, and then
yeah. And to be fair, it is what it is. Like everything before Dark Side of the Moon, I mean, they were a band and they were growing themselves. But that was the closest I'll ever get into getting into new music, like getting into new music from old artists that I know I like. Like that's the closest I'll get to that.
I'm trying to.
So I don't know. And
with their first album was like Whistler at the Gates of something or other.
Yes, I think it was Piper at the Gates of Dawn.
I got that closer than I thought I would. So yeah, I don't think I've ever heard that.
Yeah, it's got that. I think it's got that song "Bike." I've got a bike, you can ride it if you like. It's got a bell and a basket.
Sure,
yeah. So that was like the most. I'll tell you what, that was like the only song on the album. Because like if you listen to their first 2 or 3 albums, not knocking them, the guys are geniuses, but it's like a concoction of noises brought together, and like that's the song. Like so, but it's interesting to do an exercise like that, which I would definitely. It's cool. I'd recommend like doing. I'm doing Van Morrison right now. I'm in the middle of him. To force yourself to listen to the songs that you would normally skip over.
Mm-hmm.
You invest in that artist a lot, and you understand them a lot more because you can see the journey.
Yeah.
You can see how they arrived at the current sound. You can hear the development. It's
interesting that you talk about songs that you skip over, because it's like I come from pre-CD, so like I had tapes and albums and even 8-track tapes. Like technically you could, but you really couldn't even skip over. So you listened to the whole album and found an appreciation for songs that people kind of don't even particularly know, because like you said, they know the hits, they skip over. With Dawn of CDs, you're like, I don't have to listen to that one, I don't have to listen to that one. You can just listen to whatever you wanted. And now even where like album doesn't even mean anything anymore,
means nothing.
Yeah,
so it's a shame. Yeah,
it's really interesting. And me being a visual artist, the real shame is the album cover is not a thing anymore.
Yeah, that's it's things have really, unfortunately, I don't. It's difficult to have hope as to how things are going to go, but how things have changed is striking. I was speaking of Joe Rogan. I was listening to an interview he did with Billy Corgan of the Pumpkins, and he was saying like things have changed so much because now, if you want to hear a song by your favorite band, you just go on. Well, I won't mention anything in particular. You go on one of them. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Pick it up, turn it on for free, listen to it, put it down. It's that easy. Yeah. He was saying, when he was growing up, like it wasn't that easy. You had to go wait for your song on the radio. So you had to wait by the radio and get a little like
cassette tape.
My uncle would tell me he'd get like a little recording cassette thing. So when it came on, you were sitting there just hour after hour. It comes on, press record, get the song.
See, done. What you would do is you would have it already on record, but you'd hit pause. So all you have to do is unpause it, and that gave you better sound.
There you go. So and so that you invested, and if you wanted to get the album, you had to buy the album. You couldn't, if it wasn't a single, you had to buy the album. So you had to work, you had to get the money, you had to go to the record store, you had to find it in the record store, buy it, walk home, put it on. All that is you investing in that artist. It was time that you had to give and effort. And so it invests in the relationship you have with that artist.
Yeah.
So when you hear the songs, that investment changes how you experience those songs. Mm-hmm. It's not just turning it on. And now people, I'm guilty of it too. You just go on any streaming service, turn a song on, boom, done. Next song up. I don't like that one, boom, next song, done. You know,
And I think
you don't have that investment.
Right, and that's why you had bands like Kiss that had the Kiss Army with people who were so invested in, you know, the Grateful Dead, where people would tour, not with them, but basically with them. They'd follow them around the country, just going to every show. Like,
let me ask you this: Were you ever a Fish guy?
I was not a Fish guy. I was
the
lone not Fish guy in all my friends. They were all into the Fish and the Dead, and I'm like, I just don't get it. But I do have the because we were talking about the effort it took, and I remember one of my best friends, we call him Buka.
Nice.
Bribed him to drive me to the mall, to Record Town, so I could pick up this new CD that I heard about. And it was when CDs still came in like the long cardboard box. And so like I bought it, and he's like, who is Pearl Jam? And then I played it for him, and you know, the next thing you know, that's like, that was all we listened to for like a summer, was that album, and just like, out a CD if you could. And it was that, I think it was part of that. Like, he'll still bring it up. He's like, I remember when you made me take you to the mall to get that album.
Yeah, that's cool. It so you get it, you know. I mean, it's there's a lack of appreciation today, you know. But
so I didn't mean to cut you off. Are you into Fish? I didn't mean to cut off your.
No, I just I never really I definitely wasn't into them like the diehard fans. The only reason I brought them up was because that was, from what I've seen, one of the last like cult bands where people would pack up and just follow them around. Yeah. I mean, I've been at 2 Fish shows, and literally people follow them around in caravans, you know, which is cool. I mean, it's awesome. It's also funny how like I remember going there and like talking to some of these people, and they couldn't name like one Fish song, and yet they were like following them around.
Because it's more about the experience, I think, you know.
And that means something, you know. Like that experience. Something happened with how we experience music today. I mean, that's an understatement, but it's negatively changed, and I challenge myself to try to see what the positive is. Yeah. You know,
that's interesting.
It's tough.
You know, going to shows, I don't know if I see the same, you know, tailgating that I used to see. You know, I almost feel like, you know, back in the day, you'd have some drinks in the parking lot and play some hacky sack and hang out and you know, listen to whoever it is that you're going to go see, like, loudly on the car radio. But now I feel like, you know, it's almost like people are bringing grills and, you know, which I some point I get, but then I don't know. It's a different vibe, and it could just be because I'm older. It just seems to be a different vibe. Like, some of that seems less party and more cookout.
Yeah, that's. I'll tell you what. I haven't been to a show like that in a while. I mean, the shows that I go to, it's like people ask me a lot. It's like, what's the like the best show you've ever been to? The best artists, best. To be honest, the ones that stick out to me are people you'd have never heard from in places you'd have never heard about, and just magic moments when they're performing up there. There's only a handful of people around.
Yeah.
They just have the place mesmerized. They've cast a spell, and you're just in a magical moment, and you know it, and that's special. And those are the times that really stick out to me.
Yeah,
I'm not knocking the whole big concert experience, but I haven't been to one like that for a while. I'll tell you. I saw one of the best concerts I probably saw on that level was David Gilmour at Radio City. and David Crosby and Graham Nash sang backup.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and that was in Radio City Music Hall, New York, and that was magical. But it's funny, it's not even that big of a place.
Oh,
so
really?
It's like, yeah, I mean, well, compared to like a stadium
like
or
a
something
stadium,
that someone
right,
would play. Yeah, I mean, it's like it was still quite intimate, and so even a show like that, it's just those are the things that stick out to me as the intimate ones that really connect. Yeah,
I think it's
I don't grill at concerts. Well, I don't grill food. I don't grill food.
But I think each one has its own time and place. Like you wouldn't expect that giant Pink Floyd light show at a small pub, and a small pub show wouldn't work in a stadium.
Yeah.
Like one of my absolute favorite things to do music-wise is a good buddy of mine that I've pretty much met through the podcast, Jeff Rosen. He's a resident musician, plays every Tuesday at the smallest bar in Plymouth. It's you could probably outstretch your arms and touch the bar and the wall at the same time. And he plays every Tuesday night, and he calls it Naked.
Well, those are the hardest. Those are the hardest places to play. If you can do a gig like that,
yeah,
take it for what it's worth. What do I know? If you could do a gig like that, and you can engage people, you can get them to listen critically and do something to them, have them have an experience. You can do anything.
Yeah.
I think.
He calls it Naked Tuesday. And it is somewhere between, he's still doing mostly covers, but it's somewhere between really good, soulful, like his heart's really in it. And then other songs are, I don't want to say Weird Al-esque, but he changes the lyrics up and makes it dirty, and it's probably one of the places that is open latest in Plymouth. So after people have left other places, they all congregate here. The place gets packed, and it's so much fun. And he just engages the audience and takes requests, and people request songs that he doesn't know, and a good 45 seconds into the song, you'd be like, he's not even singing the lyrics, he's just mumbling because he doesn't know the words, and then he'll just stop. Like, I don't really know that one, and like it's this weird, not serious, but then like he'll do a great version of some classic rock songs that sounds fantastic, and it's just the most fun. So it's.
Do you go to live shows much?
Not as much as I used to. I try to, but now I'm a responsible adult, and child support and bills and scheduling and running Inebri-art, my day job and whatnot. So, but I try to, especially down here. There's lots of places to go see. Not stadium shows, but like smaller shows. And
people. I don't know. From what I hear, they don't do that as much as they used to. I mean, I wasn't around in the 70s and 80s, but I mean, I did think of something like how today could be positive, because I keep talking about how negative it is, how negative things change.
Well, we've all been locked inside our houses for a month, so we have a right to be a little negative.
Yeah. True that. But I'll tell you what, Dylan, a lot of people don't realize this, had his first number one single. I think it was a week and a half ago.
Oh, no kidding, really?
Yeah, I definitely recommend checking it out. It's a song he just put out.
Yeah.
It's called Murder Most Foul, and it's about the assassination of JFK. What he did, Dylan, he just literally in the midst of this pandemic overnight released a song on YouTube.
Huh.
Just put it out on YouTube, and he said, enjoy. There you go. Take it. And it went to number one. For his first and only number one single of his entire life.
Think of someone who's such a fixture in the music world that's his first number one. It's crazy.
Yeah, at this point. He came out early in 1962 was his first album, and or the 62, 61, something like that. And, but why is today positive? Because he could have never put out a song out of nowhere like that.
True.
If he had to go through, you know, his label, go through the way things used to be, you know, get it on the radio, get it out there, you know, he could just go out, put it on YouTube, and it's in the homes of millions of people at a time when people needed it. Full stop. I mean, I think it was so well timed. And he put it out with a tweet. Think of Dylan tweeting. That's hilarious.
Yeah.
But
do you think he did it, or do you think his publicist did it?
I mean, well, you know, it sounded sincere. It was something like, you know, here's a song that we didn't release from my last album. Here, giving it to you now. Stay safe out there, and, you know, God bless Bob. And the song is there, and the song is Murder Most Foul. I hope you check it out, because it's a very you can really connect to it and soak into it, and it felt like a place of solace.
Yeah. From
this the craziness that's going on, and we could have never had that if we didn't have the online that we're talking negatively about. So, you know, I guess, you know, it does have its positive. I think it's going to be interesting to see where things go with music, but that did happen. So
yeah. Well, I know you don't like discovering new music, but if our listeners want to discover new music by Kyle T. Harris, Hurley.
It's cool. I'm docking your pay.
I've actually been on a run. My normal thing is I strip names all the time, so don't.
Okay.
Please don't take that. It's my brain, not you.
It's cool.
But where can they go online to hear your music?
Well, Kyle, Kyle T. Hurley, HURLEY.com. That's my website. You can search that on Spotify, YouTube, Amazon, or just Google it, and it'll all come up.
That's awesome. And it was an absolute pleasure talking to you. Thank you for taking the time out to, you know, hang out and shoot the shit. It was fun.
Yeah, it's been cool. I'm gonna come up there to Plymouth sometime.
Check it out. Hit me up. We'll give you the dollar tour, and I'll tell you all about the Rock.
All right, man. Sounds good. Cool. Well, it's been a pleasure. Been an honor. I've enjoyed it.
Thanks, man. And we'll see you around.
All right. Have a good one. Stay safe.
You too.
Thanks for listening to the podcast. You can find us on all social medias at Inebri-art, except for Instagram. We're at Inebri-art6. You can email us with your questions, complaints, and whatnot at Inebri-art@yahoo.com. And if you're looking for more podcasts, you can check out the other podcasts on our network, Retro Redoctopus, America's Hometown Horror, and, of course, Bar Talk, Old Colony, and Inebri-art Podcast, the original. So check those out and subscribe and comment so we can reach more people. And thanks for listening.